we had some pretty big elections this week, not just in Illinois, but also elsewhere. And in Illinois, you had the Springfield mayoral election, which incumbent Mayor Jim Langfelder lost to challenger treasurer Misty Buscher. If you missed our conversation with Misty Buscher yesterday, be sure to check it out on the YouTube page. But you also had up in Chicago the outcome of, well, we all knew Lori Lightfoot wasn't getting back in as mayor because she lost the primary. But the outcome was Brandon Johnson beat Paul Vallis. And Governor J.B. Pritzker is going to be meeting with Brandon Johnson today. They're going to have a news conference after a meet and greet and a photo opportunity. So likely going to hear more about that later on today, and maybe we discuss it a bit on Monday as well. But earlier this week, the governor talked about Johnson being the victor. Here he is sounding off on that when asked earlier this week. God, that play button is killing me. It's killing me.
Start by saying congratulations to Brandon Johnson on his big win. I think there were a lot of people who were surprised. And in fact, when you say it was a small margin, actually, I think there were people who thought he would lose by a larger margin than he ended up winning by. But he won, and he overcame, I think, suggestions that he couldn't. And so anybody that's ever run for public office knows that when you can overcome expectations and eke out or succeed in winning, especially in an important city like Chicago, they deserve enormous kudos. I look forward to working with Mayor-elect Johnson. I know that I spoke with him last night. He was still celebrating and had a very long day, but we'll be meeting, no doubt, over the next couple of weeks as he moves in his transition to make sure that the state of Illinois is doing whatever we can to be supportive of him as mayor, as we are of mayors all across the state.
And the question then is about Brandon Johnson's character, which, by the way, Brandon Johnson is a Democratic socialist.
He's younger than most of the mayors that have gotten elected. He's somebody who comes out of an activist background. I think there's a lot to admire about him. He's a teacher, and I believe that he will bring a certain vibrancy to the city. So I'm excited about that. And I want to make sure that all of the very important things that Chicago needs to work on, it's whether it's balancing its budget, paying its pensions, all the stuff that sounds boring to everybody and doesn't get brought up sometimes in the midst of an election campaign, but are very important for the future of the city, that those are just baseline things. And I want the state to be helpful in that endeavor, as we are trying to be for municipalities across the state. So I do believe that this is a change for the city, something new. But you know what? It's a new generation of voters that came to the polls. There is a change that's gone on across the Midwest, I might add, that people who believe in investing in workers, investing in families, investing in young people, have come to leadership positions as governor, as mayor in states. Think about Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota and how those legislatures turned Democratic in Michigan and Minnesota. And so I think he's part of a kind of a sea change that's going on in what I guess politically we'd all call the blue wall.
So the governor talking about what he sees as a sea change, while he's helping in that sea change by giving political donations out of state, and in particular in Wisconsin, where yesterday he was asked about the contributions he gave, about $1 million in that Wisconsin Supreme Court race. People even joking that, the governor bought the Supreme Court here in Illinois. Why not just buy the Supreme Court in other states? And giving $1 million to the Democrats in Wisconsin. The governor talked about his defense of why he did that in Wisconsin or elsewhere he's giving money out of state.
First of all, the Wisconsin Supreme Court race was a critically important race. There were election deniers that have been running for offices all over Wisconsin. You know, it's a swing state. It's an important state in the general election in next year's presidential election. There were moves to invalidate electors in Wisconsin 3 years ago. And so having a Supreme Court made up of rational, non-extremist people who will simply evaluate the law and do the right thing, very, very important to all of us across the nation. In addition to that, it happens that one of the candidates was a severely anti-choice candidate. Somebody who wanted to abide by an 1800s law in Wisconsin that should have been, frankly, not part of the discussion, but that would have literally made women second-class citizens in the state of Wisconsin. And one of the candidates was pro-choice and wanted to make sure that we were upholding the equal rights of women in Wisconsin. So, to me, that's an important race. I've supported Democrats all across the country. She was a Democrat, and I was glad to be one of the leading supporters of her race. And she won, by the way, literally an overwhelming victory of 11 points.
And Pritzker wasn't the only one that was from Illinois that gave money to politics outside of the state. The U-Lines also gave some money, but interesting just to see the governor giving $1 million to the Wisconsin Supreme Court race as well, even though he's facing criticism for doing that here in Illinois, as he's the lead defendant in a case challenging the state's gun ban. That's going to be in front of the Illinois Supreme Court. But the governor also talking about what he characterizes as extremists, and he talked about that in reference to school board races here in Illinois. And again, I guess it just depends on what you see as extreme. Is it extreme to have sexually explicit books in schools that kids can go up and grab and have teachers talk about, hey, don't tell your parents that you're trans or whatever? Is that not extreme? While people who want to just know if that's what's happening in their school, that's extreme. So what's your definition of extreme? Here's the governor again talking about school board races, where he says there were, quote, extremists in those races that needed to be defeated.
Fortunately, the voters saw through the hidden extremists who were running for school board across the suburbs, especially, and voted at the Chicago suburbs. Yes, thank you. Sorry, the Chicago suburbs and the surrounding counties, just to be clear, Cook County suburbs and surrounding counties. I mean, really, the extremists got trounced yesterday. And it's been acknowledged by some of the more extreme politicians in the state overnight and this morning on Facebook and elsewhere. And I'm glad that those folks were shown up and, frankly, tossed out.
So again, I guess it depends on what you consider extreme. So we'll have more about that debate, no question. But the governor also reacting to the outcome of the Springfield mayoral race, where Misty Buscher is the elected mayor-elect in Springfield. I'll get the terminology right, I promise. Here's what he had to say about Misty Buscher's victory over Jim Langfelder.
Governor, next time you talk to the mayor of Springfield, it just might be Misty Buscher. What do you think of that?
Well, I congratulate her on her victory. I'm also, I've worked with Mayor Langfelder now for the last 4 years. And we've gotten an awful lot done for Springfield together, and I know that I'll work with the new mayor on whatever is best for the city of Springfield. We all spend an awful lot of time here, even if we're not here full time, and we know that this is a special city. It's our capital city. It ought to shine for the world. We want to bring tourists and bring the rest of the world to Springfield, and so I'm going to work closely, as I will with the mayors all across the state of Illinois.
So again, the governor just reacting to some of the political outcomes, even ones that he helped influence, even in other states. It's always good to hear the conversation and how they are characterizing their actions and the outcomes. And, it's this is an extremist, that's an extremist. And if we keep just labeling people extremist, then everybody's going to be extreme. And it's just going to be a wonderful day in extreme land, maybe. I don't know. Who knows?